This guy blew off his own brother's arms. Before everything went wrong, Isaac was treated like the future of his noble family. Maids lined up with gifts, workers praised his name, and even his nanny baked all his favorite snacks to celebrate his recommendation to the Royal Academy. Everyone called him a genius. His younger brother Jonas even played music for him with a bright smile, as if nothing in the world could go wrong. But everything changed when Isaac caught a strange fever. At first, everyone thought it was just an illness, but after 3 months, a scholar from the Magic Tower revealed the truth. Isaac's mana was abnormal. It moved too fast, too violently, like a storm trapped inside a child's body, and whenever it collided with the mana around him, it exploded. People were injured, servants died, the mansion lived in fear. Then one day, his mana exploded again and tore off Jonas's right arm. That was the moment Isaac decided he could no longer live near anyone. At just 15, he begged his father to lock him away where no one could reach him. From then on, his room became a prison, his life became research, and every person who cared for him slowly disappeared. His loyal aide Lucas stayed by his side until mana poisoning took his life. His family grew older without him. His father died. And for decades, Isaac remained locked in the dark, eating moldy bread, studying magic, and trying to solve the curse that ruined his life. Then, at 71 years old, his brother Jonas finally came to visit him. They talked through the door for hours, like two brothers trying to recover a lifetime of lost memories. But Jonas revealed something shocking to him. A war broke out, and a gate from another world opened and invaded them. Isaac's concern opened the door, and he saw blood spreading across the floor. Jonas had been stabbed and had spent his final moments speaking to him. After burying his brother in spring, Isaac finally completed his research and produced a small fireball. He had solved his curse, but it was too late. With regret in his heart, he died. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice calling his name, and this turns out to be Hans's voice. Isaac doesn't want to believe his ears because Hans died years ago, and when he opens his eyes, he is in his young body. Hans stands by the window and opens it because Isaac is drenched in sweat and looks pale. Isaac sits up, wondering if he is dreaming, while also assuming that his life is flashing before his eyes at the time of death. Hans walks to the window to see a young Jonas playing and stressing the maids out. Isaac lets out a good smile when it finally dawns on him that he is not dreaming, but he has somewhat returned to the past. He is now faced with a new life where he is expected to break free from the shackles of his past. As he stands by the window, Isaac has a flashback. Isaac once heard the maids in the other room complaining about his condition and how it always causes trouble. They are left to clean the mess that he makes, but they are always scared of when his mana will explode again. Hans soon hears this, and just as he is about to move into the room to scold them, Isaac stops him, telling Hans that they are not actually wrong. In fact, Isaac tells Hans to stop coming to see him too. Hans has a bandage wrapped around his head, and Isaac reminds him that this happened because he was next to him. Hans kneels in front of Isaac to comfort him, telling him that he is wrong about the whole thing. Hans lets Isaac know that he still cares about him, but it appears that he is going through a difficult time, and once it passes, it will no longer be a big deal. Hans spoke brightly back then, but this was how he also lost his life due to one of his mana explosions. Now that he's been given a second chance, Isaac wonders what he is supposed to do. Isaac decides to take a bold step and he coldly tells Hans to leave. Hans thinks Isaac is joking until Isaac makes it clear that he doesn't want to see him around. Hans reluctantly leaves, and even though it hurts Isaac to do this, he knows that being close to Hans will only put him in danger. As Hans leaves the room, he urges Isaac not to try to shoulder all the responsibility himself. Hans tells him that it is okay for him to trust them sometimes. After he leaves, Isaac realizes that Hans never said this in his dream, but then he slaps his face to confirm that he is truly not in a dream. The slap hurts him so much that it confirms to him that he is back in the past. He wonders how he died in his past life, but he decides to shove this aside because it doesn't matter if it is a dream or reality. What he needs to do is to prevent himself from having a mana explosion ever again. Apparently, in the past, there was someone who suffered the same condition as him, and this person was Zeke von Goethe. He was able to reach a realm where no human had reached before, which is a 10th class mage. This person was Isaac's great-great-grandfather, and he was only able to learn about him from the ancestral records that his father passed down to him when he lived in the underground cell. After years of detailed study, he discovered a way to overcome the special constitution, which is with a particular rune stone. Isaac then carves a pattern from his research onto a mana stone to create the specific rune stone that he needs. Isaac grabs the stone and realizes just how good it is to be young again because his hands used to shake before, but he is easily holding the stone firm. Apparently, to prevent the side effect of his special constitution, which is the mana explosion, the vessel that holds his mana must withstand the endlessly circulating mana. However, Isaac's mana flows so insanely fast and violently that the vessel cannot withstand it. A normal person is supposed to die the moment it shatters, but for some unknown reason, Isaac's vessel restores itself as if nothing happened. This is basically why his vessel can explode 10 or even 20 times and he is still alive. The runestone he just carved intentionally damages the mana pathways, and a continuous impact is applied to the damaged area, which leads to a new pathway opening. This is how the shock of the violent mana ends up getting dispersed. However, the success rate is quite low, and he barely succeeded right before he died. The small flame he made before he died was proof of his success, and he wonders if this will work this time around. Isaac tries to create a small fireball just like back then, but to his shock, he unleashes a flame so huge that it scares the hell out of him. Isaac cannot believe the amount of power that is flowing through him, and when he takes a look at the runestone, it still remains intact. Isaac finally figures out that his pathways have increased to 3. Each of the pathways has a different size and property, and he can manifest 3 magic spells simultaneously. Isaac cannot believe that it actually worked, but he quickly controls himself because this is not his goal. His goal is to prevent any mana explosions from happening, and for this, he figures out that 3 pathways are not enough. He realizes that he has to use more magic more often to increase the pathways. In addition, this will help minimize the burden placed on his mana vessel, but until then, he can't let anyone stay by his side. In fact, there won't be any exception whatsoever. Later on, Isaac is studying when Hans shows up in the room with a smile on his face, telling Isaac that he has brought him his favorite food, but Isaac is forced to remind him that he already told him that he doesn't want to see him. Hans tries to persuade Isaac, reminding him that he hasn't been eating well lately, so he should have at least one piece. Isaac cannot believe that Hans is not ready to listen to him, and to make it worse, he is wearing such a cute face. Isaac then asks Hans how old he is, and Hans replies that he is currently 12 years old. Since he is still at a young age, he figures out that he is at an age where he has to behave like a normal child. Isaac takes a bite out of the bread and he realizes that Nanny must have been the one who made the bread. He loves the bread so much, and he realizes just how much he's missed the bread. Isaac asks Hans where Nanny is because he hasn't seen her that day, and Hans reveals that Nanny's son, Hinder, has pneumonia. When he hears this, Isaac stops eating and talks about how nice his family is because another family would not allow Nanny to head home to take care of her son. Isaac takes his time before asking Hans if Hinder is the only one who came down with pneumonia, and Hans reveals that all of the children already have it. Upon hearing this, Isaac finally remembers what is happening. The incident that happened around this time was the Black Goose Village mass pneumonia incident. Nanny lost her son in the incident, and she had to live with a huge sense of loss until the day she died. It turns out that she also died from one of Isaac's mana explosion incidents. Remembering this terrible incident, Isaac figures out that it would be bad if the woman went through this again. Isaac remembers something important and immediately asks Hans what sort of monster or monsters were recently subjugated in the Nanny's village. After hearing Hans's answer, Isaac packed up and vanished to the Black Goose Village. Hans had told Isaac that he didn't get a good look at the monster, but it appears that people from the Magic Tower came to buy it as research material. However, from what he was able to see, it appeared to be a giant spider that was covered in silver fur. From Hans's description, Isaac realizes that he was talking about a winter spider. Winter spiders are not that strong, but they do form large swarms due to their incredible breeding rate. The real issue is that the winter spiders possess a highly dense mana that causes one to suffer from mana poisoning when one is exposed to it. This acts like a poison that slowly suffocates the affected person. Isaac figures out that the children in the village were poisoned by the mana emitted by the winter spiders. Isaac makes his way into the woods to gather herbs because he knows all about mana poisoning. However, it is still something new in this era, which is why they all believe that it is pneumonia. After gathering loads of herbs, he believes that he has enough to feed the children to alleviate their symptoms. However, its healing effects will only be temporary, and to prevent a relapse of the symptoms, the winter spiders must be completely wiped out. Isaac knows that it would have been nice to ask his parents for help, but his father is usually stationed at the border fortress, and his mother is currently traveling the continent, searching for a cure for his special constitution. Isaac knows that he can't wait around till they get back because Hinder would have died by then. Soon afterward, the nanny is watching over her son when she hears a knock on her door. She walks to the door to open, and to her surprise, she finds Isaac. Isaac is so exhausted from his travel and the effort to gather herbs that he falls into the woman's arms. The nanny asks him if something happened at the estate, which is why he left at that late hour. Isaac reveals that he is only worried because she hasn't come to work for days, and he came to check on her. The nanny tells Isaac that she might not allow him to come in because Hinder has pneumonia, and he might catch it too. To convince the woman, Isaac ties a piece of clothing over his nose, but even with this, the nanny is still reluctant to let him in. Isaac hands her the bag full of herbs and straight up walks into the house. He tells the nanny to crush the herbs, mash them, put them in a pot, brew them twice, let them cool, and then feed them to Hinder. Isaac heads to the room where Hinder is resting, and from the bluish spots all over his face, Isaac confirms that he is suffering from mana poisoning. Isaac calls Hinder's name, and he weakly answers. The first thing Hinder tells Isaac is that he should not fire his mother because she isn't able to come to work because of him. Isaac pats Hinder's forehead, assuring him that he is not going to fire his mom because he is the only one who sneaks him wheat bread, so he should just focus on getting better. Later on, Isaac has a hunter lead him to an abandoned mine. Upon arriving at the entrance of the cave, Isaac asks the dude if he is sure that this is the limestone cave, and the man assures him that it is. Isaac pays the dude his fare and tells him that he is going to handle the rest from that point forward. As he leaves, the old man urges Isaac to be careful because people have gone missing around the cave in the past. Apparently, winter spiders prefer limestone caves, and since this is the only limestone cave in the area, Isaac believes that the winter spiders are currently nesting in the area. However, before going inside the cave, he figures out that it would be better if he prepares well. He remembers that he can currently manifest 3 spells simultaneously, which puts him on par with a second-class mage. However, he can't overexert himself because his mana vessel might just shatter. In addition, he can't recklessly use magic since he doesn't know how many spiders are in there. Isaac then looks around and he finds exactly what he needs, which is the frost belladonna. The berries of the plant are usually diluted and used as a paralytic or anesthetic, but they are a deadly poison to winter spiders. Isaac cannot believe the irony that they live in the same habitat as their lethal weakness. After gathering so much belladonna, Isaac realizes that it would have been better if he had brought some gloves because his hands have swollen already, showing just how potent the poison is. Since he already made plenty of rune stones back when he was at the estate, he figures out that it is time for him to get going. Upon entering the cave, he realizes that there is a ledge and it goes straight down into a dark center. He looks around to see if there is a way for him to get down there, and fortunately for him, he finds a ladder that goes down. Isaac grabs the ladder and starts climbing down, and by the time he reaches the bottom, he is already exhausted. However, with the look of things, he realizes that he has found the right place. There are skeletons on the floor, and they are both from monsters and humans. Isaac wonders if the human bones are from the missing people that the hunter mentioned. Just then, he hears rustling around him, and he immediately creates a bunch of fireballs to surround himself. Thanks to the fire, he spots the spiders in the distance staring at him. However, he is not entirely scared because he knows that the fire will keep the spiders away since they hate fire. However, he has to prepare just before they decide to swarm him. Isaac ties a piece of clothing around his nose before he starts anything. Once he is ready, he sets the belladonna on fire and the smoke from it starts to fill the cave. As the smoke hits the spiders, they react to it negatively, and seeing just how irritated the spiders are by the smoke, Isaac figures out that it is finally time for him to begin the hunt. In the past, Isaac had stood by his window to watch one of the citizens confront his father about the bad things that were happening in the territory. He blames him because he is the lord of the territory and should have done something to avert the whole mess, but instead he believes that he has failed the people. The whole issue was mainly about the Black Goose Village, and because of how noisy the whole thing is, Isaac started considering a move to the basement. Since the basement is quieter and has fewer people around, he can just focus more on researching his special constitution there. In addition, he considers covering the wall with dimetridium because it is a material with high magic resistance to help contain his mana explosions. After talking to himself for too long, he finally called Hans's name, only to realize that Hans was dead. Now, in the present, as he sits in the cave, he wonders why he has to remember these terrible old memories. He looks around and realizes that the belladonna is seriously weakening the spiders, and since he can't feed the poison to the spiders directly, all he can do is burn the flower and let the smoke spread so it can paralyze them until they suffocate. However, this method is not flawless because he won't be safe from it too, which is why he wrapped a wet piece of clothing around his face as a primary filter. Any poison that slips into his body will be purified with the mana inside his body. He had also created a compressed fireball, which he uses as his defense to keep the spiders away. He is basically using 3 types of magic at the same time, which are purification, fire magic, and phase shift on the fire magic. He is able to cast all 3 spells simultaneously through 3 mana circuits, which could also be referred to as multi-circuit. It was thanks to this that he could buy time for the spiders to weaken, and once they are paralyzed, Isaac finishes them with a fireball. He notices that the survivors are running in one direction, and from a closer observation, he realizes that there is water where they are heading. However, there is still no hope for them because they are going to be burned to a crisp. At the same time, he is scared that he might actually suffocate if he is not careful, so he has to end everything quickly. Isaac then takes off his coat before heading to the water side. However, the moment he gets there, he starts regretting his decision to have left the coat because of how cold the whole area is. The temperature in the room has dropped so low that it could form ice, and just then he raises his head to see that the entire ceiling of the cave is filled with spider eggs. The moment he sees this, he remembers something important that sends shivers down his spine. He continues investigating the area while throwing fireballs around to make lightning for himself. Not long after this, his fears come to life as he finds himself face to face with a giant spider, which is the winter spider queen. A cold sweat trickles down his face as he trembles in fear, and without hesitation, The monster attacks him. Isaac manages to leap into the distance to avoid getting impaled by the monster's claws. He lands hard on the icy floor, causing him to groan in pain, but he immediately gets back on his feet while berating himself for always jinxing his luck. Unlike the other winter spiders, the Spider Queen is a monster that has fire resistance and even exhales frost. This is the very reason why they are called winter spiders. With fear running through his body, Isaac hurls fireballs at the spider, but it doesn't really affect the monster. Isaac is not surprised by this because he doesn't expect the spider to just burn up and die like the other spiders. Isaac knows that he would be a dead man if the Spider Queen weren't slow. However, he still has a big problem, and this is the fact that his body is slowly reaching its limit. With a 12-year-old body that has no combat experience, he knows that it is natural for him to be exhausted. To make it worse, he stayed up all night and then used magic all day. Isaac soon realizes that no one is coming to save him, and he has to get over his fear. He starts to remember the sacrifices the nanny has made just for him to be comfortable. Apparently, wheat doesn't even grow in the northern region where they are, but the nanny travels to a distant city every week just to get high-quality wheat for him to be able to eat soft bread. Upon remembering this, Isaac pulls himself together, and he decides that he is going to ask the nanny to make him a lot of bread when he gets back home. Isaac reaches for his shovel and drops his backpack as he prepares to engage the queen spider head-on because even if it is a queen, it is still a bug. Isaac drops his backpack and rushes toward the queen with his shovel. Using the queen's slow movement against her, Isaac strikes her head with the shovel, leaving a hole in it. However, this is not enough to kill the queen as he gets dragged underneath the queen monster. Nonetheless, Isaac refuses to let go of the monster's leg. After a brief deliberation on what to do to take down the monster, he figures out that he has to use a different approach. He creates a fireball which he compresses and then compresses even further until the flame turns blue. Once it is powerful enough for what he wants, he releases the compressed blue flame into the spider's belly. Just as he wanted, the flame starts to cook the insides of the Spider Queen. As the spider shakes with its life leaving its body, Isaac tries to pull out his hand, but he finds it difficult to do so because the spider won't stay still. After trying so hard, he finally gets to pull out his arm. Isaac crashes to the ground and he hits his head. However, the blue flame is enough to take down the spider and even burn a block of ice. Later on, Isaac hears familiar voices around him, and these are Hans and the nanny's voices. He hears them as they talk about how he went into the abandoned mine, which caused him to hurt himself. This is when it dawns on Isaac that he actually defeated the Winter Spider Queen, and after this, he fell unconscious when he hit his head on the ground. However, he woke up after this and barely made it out of the abandoned mine and back to the village. After this, he ran into Hans, who was loitering at the village entrance, and he just fell asleep in his arms. Now that he is awake, Isaac hears the nanny telling Hans that after she did what Isaac told him, Hinder was completely cured. Hans glazes Isaac, saying this is just how he is, because he might have gotten insensitive after the mana explosion, but his good heart never left him. Isaac almost explodes from blushing when he hears this, and he is forced to sit up so they can know that he is already awake. The two are shocked to see this, and he asks them how long he was asleep. Hans tells him that he was out for about half a day, and she asks him if he is fine. He replies that he is good, and the pain is a bit bearable. The woman freaks out when she hears this, asking Isaac what he means by bearable. She demands to know why he went to such a dangerous place alone, and he calmly replies that he fell while trying to gather some nearby herbs. Isaac knows that he obviously can't tell them that he killed a monster because there is no way they are going to believe that a 12-year-old like him did, so it would be better for him to just come up with an excuse. Isaac then asks the nanny how Hinder is doing, and she replies that he is much better after she gave him the herbs that he prescribed. In fact, the other kids in the village are all doing well. Isaac is glad to hear this, and he figures out that it would be better to keep the mana poisoning a secret because if the higher-ups find out, scholars would be brought in. It will definitely become a problem if the winter spider corpses in the abandoned mine are discovered. The nanny asks Isaac how he knows about the herbs, and he lies that he read about them in a book. Isaac then suggests that they forget about the matter, and he tells Hans that it is time for them to go. Hans lets him know that it is not proper for them to go yet because it is snowy outside. However, Isaac reminds Hans that he is going to be in a lot of trouble if they find out that he left the estate under his watch. Hans quickly agrees to this, and as they are about to leave, the nanny gives Isaac a basket of apples to take with him. It turns out that the apples were gathered by the villagers to show their gratitude. Isaac then tells the nanny to take another week off because it would be better for her to resume when Hinder has fully recovered. The nanny is surprised to hear this, and she asks Isaac if the head butler won't complain about this. Isaac shocks her, telling her that she is not going to be idle throughout the week. Isaac tells her to make jam with the apples so he can eat it with wheat bread when she returns to work. The nanny agrees to this with a smile on her face and tells Isaac that she is going to make apple pie too. A week later, Isaac is seen jogging around the estate. During this time, his mana vessel had changed and the 3 circuits had turned to 4. The mana vessel stabilized more too, and the number of magic spells he can simultaneously use increased to 4. He figures out that fighting the winter spiders and pushing himself to the limit probably helped with this. In addition, he knows that running around the estate contributed to it too. Basically, using magic requires comprehension and calculation, including intuition. This is a task that consumes a considerable amount of mental power. When the body breaks down, the mind breaks down too, and it is pretty obvious that mental power requires physical stamina. He knows that he reached his limit in the abandoned mine because he was donning an untrained young body. Isaac remembers that in his past life, Lucas used to train his stamina. Isaac is in the middle of his training when he is called upon by the head butler Schiller, who tells him that it is time for his regular checkup. The doctor walks forward to greet Isaac while asking him how he is feeling. Apparently, the dude is the personal doctor that was assigned to him by his father, and they claim he is the most successful doctor in the territory close to them. However, even the supposed expert doctor couldn't figure out his weird constitution. After he is done with the checkup, the doctor tells him that he is fine. He decides to change Isaac's medicine, but Isaac knows that he is just going to prescribe rubbish. The doctor reaches into his briefcase and reveals 6 bottles of a potion called Panacea. This is a potion that stabilizes the flow of mana. When Isaac sees this, he realizes that his father is going to extreme lengths to make sure he gets the good stuff. Basically, Panacea means cure-all in the common tongue, and it is used as a stimulant for some and a performance enhancer for soldiers. While the potion is known to stabilize the flow of mana, it is actually a misunderstanding that occurred while translating the ancient language. Its actual effect is stimulating the flow of mana, which means it is poison for him because his mana goes out of control. However, for his current situation, it is the right catalyst because if used well, it will help increase his mana circuits. After the doctor's departure, Isaac notices that Schiller is staring at him, and he asks him if he has anything to say. Schiller reveals his surprise that Isaac looks really calm because he is always throwing tantrums over being seen. Thanks to this, the doctors in the direct territory refuse to be his personal doctor, and Isaac asks Schiller if it would have been better if he had thrown a fit just as he used to. Schiller stays mute for a second before finally opening up, telling Isaac that he learned from Hans that he cured the children in Black Goose of pneumonia. When Isaac hears this, he realizes that Schiller had interrogated Hans. Schiller tells Isaac that it is going to become a big issue if the advisory committee finds out about it. Schiller then coldly tells Isaac that he is going to let it slide this time, but he urges Isaac to restrain himself. But if he can't, he tells Isaac that he should inform him first. Even in his past life, Isaac wasn't able to get close to Schiller because he was always dry and an unbending head butler. He is a supposed cold man who would always keep his distance from the others. However, according to what he heard from Jonas before he died, Schiller served the family until the very end, before losing his life. Deep down, Schiller cares a lot and only tries to act like a hard guy. Isaac then smiles, telling Schiller that he understands what he means by this. Schiller then asks Isaac if there is any particular reason why he has been running for the past couple of days. Isaac replies that throughout history, mages who reached the 5th class or higher trained their bodies, and since it is a body that channels mana, it should stay in a fit state. Later that night, Schiller writes his report about how Isaac cured the children of Black Goose Village of their pneumonia. Schiller believes that due to the nature of his constitution, it will be hard for him to use magic in the future. Schiller believes that a path as a scholar or alchemist might be right for him. He believes that with this, Isaac's father will also be relieved of some worry. Just then, a maid, Rosa, enters Schiller's office telling him that maids are disappearing. 2 girls, Clara and Annette, have vanished, and Rosa says she can actually vouch for Annette, if not Clara, that she is a good girl. In fact, Annette hasn't taken a day off in 3 years, which means something has definitely happened to her. Later on, Rosa is seen talking with another maid and a servant named Bill. Bill talks trash about the territory, saying it is not the best place to live because the weather is harsh in this area of the world, and the bandits or monsters always show up all the time. The other maid asks Bill if he is basically saying he is going to run away, and he casually replies that the possibility is not 0. The girl then says Annette is not like him who can just disappear out of nowhere because she worked hard to pay for her father's medicine. Bill stupidly says the girl must have gotten sick of taking care of her sick dad, or maybe she ran off with some deadbeat dude. Rosa yells at Bill, telling him to watch his mouth, but Bill defends himself, saying he is just putting out his own theory. The two tell him that they are not interested in whatever theory he has. Bill continues by saying whatever is happening might be an action of dark magic. They ask him what he means by this, and he reminds them that they are working for a family of mages. In addition, Isaac is not in good condition, and he believes that his father is using whatever magic he can get his hands on to heal his son. This is when it dawns on Rosa and her colleague that Bill is saying that the missing girls were sacrificed alive. Rosa scolds him, telling him to stop spreading stupid rumors, reminding Bill that the master of the house took him in even though he was a criminal. The two are arguing with each other when Isaac appears behind them, telling Bill that he has a very interesting story. Isaac smiles at him, urging him to tell him more of the story. and Bill freaks out when he realizes that he has run his mouth in Isaac's presence. Isaac then takes Bill to his office to hear more from him. Bill reveals that the first maid who disappeared 2 months ago was Hilda, and a few weeks later, Clara went missing. It was the past weekend that Annette vanished after going to Mass. With a cold stare, Isaac asks him if he has any idea why this happened. Deep down, Bill is worried when he sees just how cold Isaac's glare is, and he replies that he has no idea what might have happened. Isaac then assures him that he can be honest and he won't punish him for it. Bill is forced to ask if Isaac is sure about what he is saying, and Isaac says yes. Bill stays mute for a minute, and Isaac asks him if he thinks the girls disappeared because of him. Bill stutters before saying it is quite obvious that it is related to him. He mentions that Hans is the closest to Isaac and he is always bruised or injured. In addition, he is always complaining about one pain or the other. Bill continues running his mouth, saying he is pretty sure that Hans would be the one to die the most painful death of all. Bill stops talking immediately when he realizes that Isaac's mood has totally changed and he starts freaking out, begging Isaac to spare his life. He talks about how he hasn't gotten married or even had any kids, and Isaac casually asks him if he wants to live. Isaac lets him know that if he wants to live, he would have to do some work for him. Later on, Isaac is seen in his room thinking about Rosa and Annette. In his past life, after Hans and his nanny died, they were the only maids who volunteered to serve him. Even when he tried to get rid of them, the two refused to leave. He even tells them to stop bringing him potions because they are useless. But the two urge Isaac not to give up hope because everything will definitely get better. Isaac didn't really take this well, telling them how bad it is to kill someone he loves with his own hands. Isaac screams at them, asking them if they know how it feels, and Annette steps up, telling Isaac that she knows because she caused her friend's death with her own hands. Isaac is surprised to hear this, and he asks for more details. Annette reveals that it happened in the past, saying she might have been able to save Clara if she had reached out to her. Annette walks up to Isaac, telling him that she understands his unique situation. However, she lets him know that anyone can end up doing things that they never intended. She calmly tells Isaac that it can happen to anyone once in their lives. Surprisingly, Annette's talk was able to bring him comfort back then. Now, in the present, Isaac regrets that he didn't ask for more details. Moments later, Bill shows up in the room, and it appears that Isaac had given him a mission to find out where the maids went. Bill confidently says he has because it didn't even take him long. Bill claims that he asked around among beggars near the roads, and their descriptions matched perfectly. Isaac asks him what he found out, and Bill replies that the conclusion was that they were grabbed by slave traders. He says the slave traders trick people by saying they will take them to the prosperous South but end up selling them off. Isaac expresses his confusion, saying they could have gone to the South on their own without a broker if they wanted to. Bill then tells Isaac that he has it all wrong because the road to the South is dangerous and treacherous, which is why they needed someone to protect them throughout the journey. After saying this, Isaac agrees with him, saying his theory makes sense, but deep down, Bill has an agenda. He assumes that Isaac is still a kid and that he is clueless about how the world works. Bill then tells Isaac that it cost him a lot of money to get the beggars to talk, so he has spent all 20 silver coins that he gave him as travel funds. Isaac is surprised to hear this because the amount is enough for half a year's wages. Bill claims that everyone was on guard, and Isaac tells him that he doesn't really care about the money because what he wants is to find the maids as quickly as he can. Bill lets off a huge smile when he hears this, and he immediately asks Isaac if there is something else he wants him to do. Isaac says yes, assuring him that he is going to be well compensated for this. Bill celebrates deeply when he hears this because, to him, he has found a sucker. He is convinced that if he plays Isaac right, things will become lucrative for him. He sees Isaac as a freshly laid golden egg, but the only flaw is that Isaac is a ticking time bomb. Nonetheless, he is not worried because there is no reward without a bit of risk. With a smile on his face, he tells Isaac that he can lead him to the broker. But everything happens in a flash, and when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in a cell in only his underwear. He screams out in shock, asking how he got into a cell, but unknown to him, Isaac is standing behind him with a runestone in his hand, and he is coldly smiling at the dude's misfortune. Finding himself in a cell, Bill starts wondering how this came to be. He clearly remembers that everything was going just fine, starting from how he was able to sneak Isaac out of the mansion to meet the broker who took the maids. Everything appeared to be going smoothly until the broker noticed the jewel on Isaac's chest, and he immediately figures out that he is a noble's child. Even though Isaac is a target, Bill can't understand why he was also thrown in the cell alongside him. To make it worse, they didn't even take anything from Isaac, but Bill can't say the same because everything except his underwear was taken away from him. Bill frantically turns to Isaac, asking him if he has a plan now that they have been trapped in a cell. Bill screams at Isaac, who is busy playing with the runestone in his hand. Isaac is surprised that Bill has finally shown his true colors, since he has dropped the formalities of calling him young master. Bill argues with him, asking him if he would use formalities if he were in his shoes, because, as it stands, it appears that they are about to die. Isaac simply tells him that he is leaving to find Annette and the other maids. Bill taunts him, asking him how he plans to do that when they are clearly in a cage. Isaac ignores his worries and he simply stretches his hand to destroy the cage with his magic, leaving Bill in complete shock. His attitude immediately changes and he starts referring to Isaac as his master again, asking him not to leave the dungeon without him. Isaac returns the energy, asking him if he knows him, but Bill begs him not to act petty. Meanwhile, some of the bandits have already heard the loud noise from breaking the gate and they are on their way to check what is going on. Realizing that Isaac is about to leave him behind, Bill goes down on his fours like a dog, begging Isaac not to leave him behind. In fact, he lets Isaac know that he is going to do anything he wants, and the moment Isaac hears this, he remembers that Bill was once in this exact position in the past. Back then, Bill was caught trying to sell the family's secrets to the bandit organization. Bill begged to be spared, but his pleas fell on deaf ears since he was originally a bandit who was taken in and given a second chance, but he found a way to ruin it. Bill shed tears as he begged with everything he had, promising that he would never betray the family again, but his pleas amounted to nothing as he was cut down in the cold snow and his blood warmed the soil. Isaac regrets the fact that the guy was killed because he would have been useful if he were a bit less greedy. Now that he is in the same position, Isaac figures out that Bill, being a former bandit, was familiar with the underground economy, which is why he was able to track down the maids using his knowledge. From what he can remember, the criminal organization Bill was trying to sell the secret books to in his past life is the same bandit group that abducted the maids now. This bunch of criminals expanded their power via human trafficking, and they eventually spread through Gerda's territory like cancer and tormented the people. With this, Isaac figures out that he has to eliminate any and every seed that could threaten his family. Isaac then whips out a contract scroll, telling Bill that there is something he must do since he is ready to do anything. Meanwhile, in the bandits' boss room, their boss Niers is having a meal while his men stand around to spectate. He also serves his dead father, who is nothing but bones, a meal of his own, while having a weird conversation with the skeleton. Apparently, Niers believes that if he is able to get his hands on black magic, he would be able to revive his father. His men just stand there in disgust, but can't even say anything about what is happening right in their presence. Just then, he turns to his lackeys, asking them where his bathwater is, and he is basically referring to a human he would like to sacrifice and bathe in their blood. One of the lackeys tries to tell him that the only captives left are merchandise they plan to sell to merchants, but before he can even finish the statement, Niers grabs his head and crushes it, letting the blood spill on him. This gory moment scares the other two down to their bones, and they watch Niers in utter disbelief. Niers confidently mentions that the blood on him should already be enough for his bathwater. After this, he leaves the room, and the remaining two fall to their knees in fear. The two agree among themselves that the next time Niers asks for bathwater, they are going to hand over the merchandise without question because trying to put the organization first will just lead to their death. The two then proceed to take care of their colleague's body. Suddenly, they hear a strange sound in the lobby, and they swallow in fear. They rush outside to check what is going on, only to find Niers' head rolling on the floor. They freak out and fall to the ground in fear, and before they know it, a bloodied Bill appears in the distance, walking towards them menacingly. Bill has a large knife in his hands, and even though he looks intimidating, deep down, he is panicking because he doesn't even know what he is doing. He's worried that he is putting himself at risk just because of what Isaac did to him. Apparently, the contract that Isaac had him sign had 3 conditions. The first is that the contractee, which is Bill himself, shall obey the contractor Isaac without conditions. Secondly, Bill shall not disclose information regarding Isaac. The third condition is that if Bill violates any of the previous terms, the penalty is death. Bill freaks out when he sees this, but Isaac ignores his concern, telling him that he just has to sign the contract with his blood because it is the only way for his magic to take effect. Bill screams at Isaac, telling him that there is no way he is signing such a contract, but they suddenly hear some of the bandits closing in on them. Isaac uses the opportunity to remind him that they don't have much time. Realizing that Isaac is right and the bandits are just going to kill him if he doesn't cooperate, Bill grabs the knife from Isaac's hand. He cuts his finger and presses it down on the contract scroll, which immediately gives off a bright light. Just after signing the contract, the bandits walk in on them, demanding to know how they got out. Bill freaks out, but Isaac calmly attacks the trio with ice balls to knock them out. Bill is left in complete shock, and he asks Isaac if the trio is dead, but Isaac lets him know that they just fainted. Bill asks Isaac how he is able to do this, and Isaac confidently unveils the ice sphere in his hands, revealing that he simply used magic. After this, Bill gets a cloth from the bandits, and he arms himself with the knife. As they walk through the sewers, Bill nervously tells Isaac that it is his first time seeing ice magic, so he has no choice but to admit that Isaac is amazing. Isaac tells him that it is normal for ice magic to be rare, and this is because it is not really practical. Moments later, they spot another bandit in the corner, and Isaac decides to use this as a lesson for him. Isaac asks Bill what he needs to make ice, and Bill nervously replies that it is basically water. Isaac assures him that this is the right answer, revealing that whether it is moisture in the air or puddles on the ground, what he first needs is to shape the water in the form that he wants. After this, he is going to compress, condense, expand, and then evaporate. Basically, it has to go through these 4 stages, and managing each individually is simple, but executing them at the same time is the hard part. While Isaac is cooking up the ice ball, Bill urges him to hurry up so they don't get caught. However, the warning comes late as the bandit notices them and starts walking up to them. The dude basically serves himself up as a test subject as Isaac unleashes the ice bullet, and it hits the bandit really hard on the head to knock him out. Isaac then tells Bill that because of how complicated ice magic is, it is not very useful in combat. In fact, Isaac wouldn't have tried using it if he didn't have the Frost Mana Stone, which he salvaged from the Winter Spider Queen's carcass. Even though ice magic isn't popular, Mana Stones have academic value in their own right, so they fetch a high price. Isaac is glad because he managed to get his hands on something really good. Bill then asks him why he is still using ice magic when he knows that it is not convenient, and Isaac replies that this is because it is unpopular, so very few people know about it. Isaac mentions that it is really hard to distinguish from blunt force trauma, and since it turns to water when it melts, it leaves no evidence behind, which makes it perfect for stealth. Bill then asks Isaac why he is not killing the bandits, and Isaac lets him know that this has no use because even if he kills them, they are just going to be replaced by another set of trash idiots. As they continue taking down the bandits, Bill expresses his concern, saying leaving them alive might give them a chance to continue doing bad things, but Isaac lets him know that this is exactly why he is keeping them alive. Isaac reveals that his target is just one person, and just then, they run into Nears. Bill freaks out when he sees the scary dude, and he quickly informs Isaac of who Nears is, revealing that he is a lunatic who tears people apart with his bare hands. Isaac didn't even flinch from this, and he tells Bill that this basically saves him the trouble of finding the dude himself. Isaac conjures a big ice spear and hurls it directly at Nears, but just as it is about to hit Nears, he dodges and slams the ice spear into the wall with his bare hands. Bill screams out in fear when he sees this, but Isaac remains calm and collected. Isaac commends Nears' strength, asking him if he is from a northern tribe. Bill, on the other hand, can't believe that Isaac is seriously commending someone who is about to tear them apart. Nears also expresses his happiness that he has finally found sufficient bathwater for himself, since Isaac is a mage. He mentions that Isaac is going to be an excellent material for his black magic, but Bill starts begging to be spared. Nears walks toward them and Bill freezes up in fear while begging to be spared, but suddenly he notices that Nears is no longer moving. Bill opens his eyes in shock, only to see the ice spear protruding out of Nears' chest from behind. Bill is left in complete shock as he realizes that Isaac just used the same ice that was deflected earlier to kill Nears from behind. Nears crashes to the ground and Isaac tells Bill that from that moment forward, he is the leader of the organization. With the knife in his hand, Isaac asks him if he knows what he has to do, and Bill rushes over to relieve Nears of his head. Isaac remembers advice given to him by Annette that anyone can end up doing things that they never wanted to do, even if it is only once in their lives. She mentions that this is an incident that will haunt Isaac forever, which is why he will be left with 2 options. The first is that either Isaac suffocates under the weight of this guilt, or he struggles to live on for their sake. Apparently, Annette was burdened by the guilt of losing her friend Clara back then, which is why she gave Isaac that advice. But in this life, Isaac is prepared to make sure that Annette never loses her friend. Once Nears has been taken care of and Bill has been appointed as the leader, the maids are rescued from the sewers and are put in a carriage heading to the mansion. When Annette finally settles in, she heads to Isaac's office to tell him how Clara and Hilda plan to go to the south because they heard promises that life in the south was getting better. Isaac is not surprised when he hears this because it is just as Bill suspected. He then asks Annette if she was kidnapped while looking for these two. Annette tells Isaac that by the time she met Hilda and Clara in the sewers, they had lost their minds. Annette admits that if she had stayed a few more days too, she would have gone crazy too. Isaac is not surprised because the sewer is a place where humans are sold or eaten. Even Isaac, who has seen a lot, was traumatized when he saw this, so he obviously knows how much worse it is going to be for the young girls. Annette then confesses, revealing that she actually had the chance to escape because the iron gate where they locked her in was broken. Annette feared that if they had not been rescued, she might have killed Clara with her own hands in the end. Isaac understands how bad the memories must have been for her, and he thanks her for taking the time to tell him. Annette then mentions that there is one thing that is bothering her, and Isaac asks her what it is. She reveals that when the bandits were sending them back to the mansion, she and Clara were happy. But Hilda was different. Hilda mumbles something about dying if she goes back to the mansion. Annette says her words didn't seem like she was scared of being punished, and after hearing this, Isaac tells Annette that he is going to look into it. Annette further adds that Rosa mentions that the reason the bandits suddenly let them go might be because of Isaac. Annette blushes, revealing that she actually believes that Rosa is right because the only person who would pay attention to maids like them is Isaac. Isaac's eyes light up with hope when he hears this, and he thanks Annette for this. He then suggests that they continue the conversation later, so Annette leaves. After her departure, Isaac smiles because he has managed to find a great talent in Annette. He could see her mana pool, and it is pretty impressive, so this convinces him that it might be worth teaching her magic. Later on, two maids are seen talking about the maids who just returned and the fact that Isaac took them back in. They are surprised that Isaac went all this way just for some young maids, and they believe that he has something intimate going on with them. While they are busy making their stupid assumptions, Bill walks past them and he heads into the storeroom. It turns out that he is meeting with the sleeper agents that Niers has planted in the mansion before his death. Now that Bill is the leader, they have to report to him. Isaac had told Bill that even if they wiped out the criminal group in the environment, another group would just pop out soon enough, but instead of doing this, it is better to keep them under his control to manage them. Bill realizes that Isaac has been planning this from the start, which is why he forced him to sign such a contract. Bill is freaking out because if something bad is to happen, he will be the first to die at this point. Bill tries to sit into the role of the boss that has just been dumped on him, and he asks the dudes if they are the only ones Niers planted in the mansion. They confirm this, saying Niers told them to keep an eye on the mansion. Bill smiles evilly, saying Niers is pretty smart to have planted his agents in noble households. Just then, they tell him that Niers has always prepared a tribute, and Bill asks them what tribute it is. They inform him that it is the tribute to be offered to the knights around that time of the year. They reveal that the reason they settled down where they are is that the knights have their backs. Bill is confused when he hears this, and some days later Isaac is seen training in his room. He hurls a fireball at his target, but concealed behind the fireball is the main threat, an ice crystal. Once the fireball hits, the ice crystal follows suit, dealing the most damage in the end. It turns out that Isaac's mana circuits have increased from 4 to 5 after he killed Niers. Isaac figures out that, at the moment, he just needs to practice multicasting different types of magic simultaneously because he knows he just got lucky killing Niers. He was only able to kill him because Niers underestimated him and let down his guard. He remembers that Jonas told him a lot about the enemies that House Goethe has. Apparently, they were all optimized for dealing with mages, and Isaac knows that there won't be another lucky moment like the one he enjoyed with Niers, so the only option is for him to get stronger so he can protect Goethe. Just then, Hans and the nanny rush into the room, telling Isaac to prepare quickly, and Isaac asks them why they are rushing him. With a smile on her face, the nanny tells Isaac that his father is back, and this news shocks him to his bones. In the past, his father had come to see him when he was in isolation. Even though his father was going through a lot back then, he still sat the older Isaac down to give him a proper haircut. His father even offered to send him to heaven, promising that it would be painless, but Isaac still refused to die, so his father had no choice but to respect his wishes. After he is done cutting his hair, he kisses him on the forehead while telling him that it is going to be their last meeting. As his father leaves the room, he tells his son that he will wait for him in heaven, and he urges Isaac to leave all of his regrets behind when he finally decides to join him in the afterlife. Now, in the current timeline, Isaac is left in complete awe since it is the first time he has seen his father since then. His father tells him that he heard that he treated the children in the Black Goose Village, and Isaac asks him if Schiller was the one who told him this. His father replies that he initially thought he had misheard Schiller, and Isaac claims that he was just lucky. He mentions that he just so happened to read a book about a peculiar case of pneumonia, and the book matched the symptoms of the children in the village. Surprisingly, his father doesn't probe further, and he asks Isaac how he is currently feeling. Isaac replies that he can't say for sure, but it is worth noting that he hasn't caused any explosions in recent times. His father immediately assumes that the doctor he sent from Othon did a good job, and Isaac agrees with him even though he knows that the doctor did nothing. As the conversation continues, he asks his father how the border fortress, Winterband, is holding out. His father asks him why he is curious about something like this, and he replies that he is a Goethe, so at some point he has to go to Winterband. His father replies that it is the same as usual, which is just snow, monsters, and the like. However, he mentions that they stopped at Burn City when they were returning, and they have always done this whenever they needed supplies. Isaac is surprised when he hears this because he recognizes the city as the city where the underground operation is taking place. His father mentions that there was an incident where an infantryman attacked a company commander. Isaac is surprised when he hears this, and he boldly declares that the infantryman has to be executed, but his father lets him know that the affected company commander has requested a military tribunal instead. Isaac hears this and immediately starts wondering why the victim would do something like this. Just then, they hear a knock on the door and two knights enter the room. The two offer their greetings to Isaac, and when Isaac turns around, he notices that the brown-haired man has a bandage over his head. Apparently, the redhead is Fickle, while the brownhead is Randolph. With the two coming to see Isaac's father, the man tells Isaac that he can leave. As he steps out of the room, he hears Fickle telling his father that they have to conduct the tribunal fast so as to execute the offender. Isaac's father is surprised at how impatient Fickle is about the whole situation, and Fickle claims that it is a matter of discipline. Isaac's father asks Randolph what he thinks about this, and he replies that he is only following Fickle's orders. Fickle is surprised that Randolph is acting so casual even though he was the one who lost an ear. Isaac is able to hear up to this point before finally leaving the vicinity, but from what he has put together, he figures out that Randolph is the victim. Just then, Bill comes running over like a scared sheep, telling Isaac that he has been looking for him because it is a matter of utmost urgency. Isaac calmly asks him what the issue is, and Bill replies that he heard something important from one of Nears' lackeys. Apparently, there were 2 knights who took a bribe to turn a blind eye to what happened in the underground. The moment Isaac hears this, he becomes even more serious, and Bill lets him know that something recently happened at the entrance of the underground operation. Apparently, the corpse of one of Nears' men was discovered, but the strange thing is that everything except his left pinky finger was cut off. Isaac asks him why this is important, and Bill reveals the scary fact that he woke up on his bed with all the missing fingers on his bed. In fact, he lets him know that they sent a message through his subordinate telling him that if the tribute is not ready in 2 days, they are going to cut his fingers. Bill freaks out while revealing all of these, and he urges Isaac to do something about it because he was the one who forced him to become the leader of the organization. Isaac calmly asks him if there were any witnesses at the time of death concerning the corpse, and he replies that there was one, but it actually happened in a flash. Apparently, it is said that a sword flashed before them, and before they knew it, it was over. The only notable thing is that the attacker had a bandage wrapped around their head. The moment Isaac hears this, he starts walking off, telling Bill that he already knows everything he wants to. Bill is still freaking out, but Isaac assures him that he isn't going to die. Isaac remembers what his father told him about what happened at Burn City when they took care of a bandit to make an example of him. And as if this is not enough, the person's description resembles Randolph's. Isaac is pissed when he puts this together because this only means that those he believes are defending the kingdom are trash. Isaac then makes his way to the dungeon because he wants to have a one-on-one meeting with the man who cut off Randolph's ear. Basically, he wants to confirm if the Knights are connected to the crime organization, which is why he wants to see the prisoner. Upon arriving at the prisoner's cell, he wastes no time asking him if he knows the crime organization called Nears. The dude, who is in chains, sits there in silence, staring into Isaac's eyes, and this is when Isaac notices that the dude is familiar. Isaac continues by asking if the dude knows about the connection between the organization and Fickle. The prisoner gets up and tells Isaac that he is only going to say something to him once, and this is the fact that he knows nothing. He looks intently at Isaac while saying this, but this only gives Isaac the chance to clearly see through him. Isaac smiles while revealing the dude's name, which is Carlson. Isaac lets him know that he now remembers everything, but he wants to know if his only answer is going to be a lie because he knows his true name, Kyle. Kyle is dumbfounded when he hears this, and he steps back in shock. He demands to know how Isaac knows about this secret name. Apparently, the first time Isaac heard about Kyle was when the civil war in the kingdom was escalating. The civil war basically started with the succession ceremony for the throne, and because the second prince lost the war of succession, he betrayed the kingdom and sided with the empire to cause a massacre at the succession ceremony. After the kingdom was subjugated by the empire, the people gathered and started a rebellion, which led to a civil war. It turns out that the leader of the rebel army was Kyle, who goes by Carlson to everyone else. About how Isaac knows about Kyle, he basically read about him in a book, The Chronicles of Villains, which was a popular book that illustrated the stories of several famous villains along with their portraits. The most interesting part of the book is the fact that it was assessed that Kyle will become the continent's 7th swordsmaster, since he is a genius. Now that Isaac is seeing Kyle in person, he has no choice but to agree with this take because Kyle has such incredible mana. Isaac figures out that Kyle must have put in so much effort so far, and he can't even imagine how strong he will become if he has the chance to bloom. In his previous life, Kyle had managed to escape his execution to become the rebel leader in his previous life. Kyle keeps yelling at Isaac, asking him how he knows about him, and Isaac urges him to calm down because it is too early to be surprised. Isaac lets him know that he is also aware of the fact that he is the son of Cation, and this further adds to Kyle's discomfort. Kyle asks Isaac who he is, and Isaac berates him for serving in Winterband without knowing the eldest son of House Goethe. Kyle yells at him, saying this is not what he is asking because what he just wants to know is how Isaac knows the things he does. Kyle asks Isaac if he is there to kill him, but Isaac tells him to chill out because he is too self-conscious. He asks Kyle why he would care about the son of a mercenary from the neighboring country. He mentions that he is also aware of the fact that he is the illegitimate son who disappeared over a decade ago. This leaves Kyle in total confusion, and he asks Isaac if he really is Isaac, Goethe's son. Isaac lets him know that it is up to him to believe him or not, but there is only one thing he needs to know. Isaac asks him why the company commanders of Winterband got involved in the slave trade, and Kyle decides that he has all the reasons to answer him, since he is the eldest son of the Goethe family. Isaac is surprised that Kyle is ready to cooperate even though the company commanders might pin the crimes related to Nears on him, which will make him a wanted criminal in the kingdom. Isaac lets him know that if this happens, he won't be able to start his revenge. But after minutes of silence, Isaac realizes that Kyle is not someone he can manipulate. Since this is the case, Isaac figures out that he has no choice but to draw out the bad guys himself. Later on, Randolph and Fickle receive an invitation from the supposed Nears leader, and the two dress in their covered outfit. As they walk through the sewers, the two are surprised that there are no slaves whatsoever. This only makes them angrier because Bill told them to come find him if they have a problem with this, and this leaves them wondering if the new leader wants to cut them off. Upon entering the room where the meeting is to take place, Bill is already waiting. With fear written all over him, he welcomes them, and he opens the door for them to enter. The two initially stayed on guard, but when they realized that Bill was unarmed, they decided to chill out. The two boldly stroll into the room where the leader is waiting, and because the room is dark, they can't see that Isaac is the one sitting at the other side of the table. Fickle tells Isaac that he must really be brave to have invited them out after failing to provide their tribute. Isaac finally speaks up, and he decides to ask the two one simple question. The moment they hear his voice, they are startled because they were not expecting a kid's voice. Isaac gets up from his chair and walks up to them while asking them why they did what they did. The moment Randolph spots Isaac, he goes down on his knees, bowing to him. Fickle is confused, and Randolph yells at him, telling him to kneel down. Fickle finally gets to see Isaac's face when he emerges from the darkness, and the smile on his face almost sends the two into a paralysis. Since Isaac is already onto them, they have no choice but to explain what happened. It turns out that the two started collecting bribes from the syndicate because their troops were starving and they wanted to use the money for the good of their men. They were happy with their first paycheck because they realized that they could replace their bad swords with this, while still keeping some for pocket money. The two are in their usual mood of splitting their money when Kyle enters the room, and he is totally pissed that the two are receiving bribes. After telling Isaac what happened, Isaac sighs in disappointment, but mentions that he is pretty sure that the two have their reasons. Isaac lets them know that his father is upright, but he lacks both resourcefulness and flexibility. Isaac says his father is the shield that protects the North, and the two respected him for this. At the same time, they couldn't stand around while their fellow men died, so they resorted to extorting money from the bandits to cover the supply shortages. Fickle quickly jumps in, saying this is exactly the case, and Isaac mentions that it is time for him to deliver his verdict. Isaac shocks them by pronouncing a death sentence for them both. Fickle screams out in shock, and Isaac lets them know that his father's judgment wouldn't be any different. However, Fickle doesn't want to accept this, and he gets up in anger, berating Isaac for condemning them to death even after he's heard their story. He asks Isaac if he knows what they are going through in the harsh snow, all in the name of serving the kingdom, and Isaac simply replies that he doesn't. Isaac gets up, telling them that they have no shortage of excuses, but he would like to know why they also kidnapped civilians. While Fickle is trying to argue with Isaac, Randolph remains silent as he bows his head in shame. Fickle claims that kidnapping civilians is all Nears' doing, and Isaac asks him if he is basically saying he didn't cross the line as Nears did. Fickle loses his temper, saying he shouldn't have expected someone like Isaac to understand what is happening. Fickle yells at Randolph, asking him how long he plans to sit where he is, telling him that they are the swords of Goethe, and if it is to protect Goethe, he is ready to cut down anything, even if it is their master's son. Randolph gets up when he realizes that things are getting serious, and he asks Fickle if he really means to kill the young master. Fickle tells Randolph to think about it because their master still has Jonas as his son. Fickle believes that it is better for them to kill Isaac and be done with it. Fickle shows how serious he is by unleashing his aura as he prepares to cut Isaac down. Isaac is surprised that the dude has gotten so serious that he even plans to use his aura. Randolph, on the other hand, is panicking because he never wanted things to turn out this way. Randolph realizes that what they are now doing is no longer for the good of Goethe. And after taking a deep breath, Randolph pulls out his sword to defend Isaac. Randolph reminds Fickle of what he once said to him about being the protector of the kingdom. Basically, Fickle considers himself the shield, while Randolph is the sword. Randolph reminds Fickle of what Kyle said to them. He had mentioned that a sword that can cut through anything without breaking is a masterpiece. But when a masterpiece gains a will of its own, it becomes a demonic sword. Fickle is surprised that Randolph is seriously pulling his sword on him. Randolph ignores him and goes after him. A fight breaks out between the two, and Randolph tells Fickle that he only realized that Kyle was right after his ear was cut off. Fickle yells at Randolph, asking him if he's gone crazy because he is definitely going to die if they are caught. Randolph lets him know that he doesn't care about this because it is their karma. As the two continue crossing swords, Randolph reminds Fickle that the money they have taken has not been used solely for the territory. Fickle slacks off, giving Randolph the chance to finish him off. After their fight, in which Randolph comes out victorious, he stands before Isaac to hear his sentence. On the other hand, Bill is packing Fickle's remains into a sack. Randolph mentions that when Kyle walked in on them, they had the intention of silencing him, but Randolph lost to him, which resulted in him losing an ear. Randolph mentions that Kyle could have actually killed them, but he just told Randolph to open his ears to the truth, cut off his ear, and then let himself get arrested without resisting. Isaac then asks Randolph if he stopped Kyle's execution out of guilt, and Randolph simply replies with a sigh. Randolph is shivering in fear, and he asks Isaac what will happen to his family once this gets out. Isaac replies that he obviously knows the answer for himself, and Randolph stands there in complete defeat. Bill can sense the tension in the room, and he fears that something is about to go wrong again. Just then, Isaac asks Randolph if he would like to pay for his sins through alternative means.